Welcome to The Lesson Plan, the podcast where we take a deep dive into academics in Denver Public Schools. And Happy New Year to you. This is our first episode of 2026. So thank you for joining us. I'm DPS Communications and Community Engagement Manager Nicole Brady. Our topic today is one I am very excited about. It is the perfect subject for a new year because we are talking about money. We're talking about financial literacy in DPS. And my guest is Theresa Connolly, the Financial Literacy Curriculum Specialist for the district. Thank you so much for being here,
Thank you,
Theresa.
for having me.
This is a great time of year to talk about this. Unfortunately, so many people go, into the new year with credit card debt from the holidays. Hope you're in a good spot.
Yes, definitely. I think it's always, and then tax season comes around, and the new year just brings a whole new light, and you're like, you have only these new goals for 2026.
Yes. So I am excited to talk about all these things that we are now teaching to kids much younger, much earlier than I learned them. Last year, Colorado actually passed a law making financial literacy a graduation requirement. And what many people may not know is that DPS was ahead of the game there, enacting this a full year earlier because our financial literacy requirement now starts with the class of 2027 here in DPS. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's been a journey because I think financial literacy across the country, similar to in Colorado, has just gained so much momentum. So many people want it and want it for their kids. And so in DPS, this started about 5 years ago, where a DPS alumni group called EDNIUM came to the table and said, we really wish we had the financial literacy tools in order to have prepared us for what came after high school and to be able to say, what would college loans look like? What does an IRA look like for my first big job? And what are the tools that I need to know going into the real world after high school?
So this alumni group gets the ball rolling.
Yep.
I know then you and EDNIUM testified at the Capitol about the financial literacy requirement for the state.
Yeah, so now DPS is truly the model because we've had this in place. We've been implementing for a couple of years and we're on track for 2027. But then they came to the state and they said, you know what, this needs to be for every kid in Colorado. And it was so powerful just listening to the testimonies of DPS parents, teachers, students, current students, and then I got to testify, and it was just their testimonies were the most powerful because they just got to share how incredible the course was for what their financial futures look like.
Awesome. Let's talk about how the district implemented this as a requirement then. It was a pilot program first, is that right?
Yep. So there was a few years of a runway for us, and we were able to really test out curriculum. Next Gen Personal Finance is the curriculum we decided on. And overall, just we were able to pilot with a few teachers, get a lot of feedback from them to say what's working, what's not. It's always scary when it's a little bit of a change and teachers taking on new things, but they were so excited to start teaching it. And once these pilots started rolling, it really was a really easy transition. And then we ran a bunch of teacher training that we're going to continue to make sure that all teachers are equipped to be ready to teach it.
And this is in humanities. This is in the social studies curriculum, correct?
Yes. So the social studies standards were changed and adopted. They've been in place, but they were rewritten and adopted in 2022. And so that's when financial literacy became its own set of standards.
Nice.
From K to 12. So it really spans across, which means we were able to put all of those standards into one standalone course, which is now the graduation requirement at the state level.
Very easy. Just you sign up for that one course, and that's your requirement. So let's talk about what the students are actually learning. Most likely their junior or senior year. The district you mentioned is using the Next Gen Personal Finance curriculum. What topics does that entail?
Yeah, I think back to one of our teachers calling it Adulting 101 because it's loans, it's college loans, it's car loans, and then you span into banking, savings, checkings, like the basics of budgeting. But then there's topics like taxes and what are we going to do? How do you file your taxes? And then insurance, and there's a whole big unit on college and career. So there's just a ton that, I wish I had as a kid, going into the real world of like, what do I need to know about what I'm about to face, outside of high school.
Absolutely. I mean, the basics of budgeting and things like that, that should be taught so early. But what I really love it, and we had talked about this, is that teachers also can kind of bring in their own personal experiences. Students can ask questions. You can bring in things that are topical in the world right now, tariffs, inflation. So I understand that's one of the reasons why teachers and students really like this class, is that you get exposure to all these things.
Well, it's called personal finance, right? So, and it's financial literacy standards, but they really are tailored to how does this relate to my life? And that is what makes it different than a business course or accounting course, is like there are foundations of money that we can learn about, but then you're really turning it back to you in your community as a person to say, what is my relationship with money, and how am I going to like bring this back to my community, and how am I going to plan for my life with my future goals? And so teachers are able to just bring in their own personal stories. They love talking about what they wish they would have known as a kid, and also saying the power of compound interest. Like, what does it look like when now that you are 16 and you have a job, or you're about to get your first job? What do you need to know about what you can opt into? Do you have options? Do you need to file taxes? And so kids really are coming back with the questions that they're dealing with today.
Yeah.
And then they're thinking about, as they're planning, junior and senior years, when you're planning about that post-secondary. And so what does life immediately after high school look like? And then you get to sit and plan the next 10 years, 20 years, and really think about all of the factors that go in. Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. I want to highlight that some students don't have the same experience as others in terms of their backgrounds with money, with finances. I went to a junior achievement stock market challenge, and there was a club there, like a finance club. And I mean, these kids already knew about trading stocks and things like that. And I thought, okay, they're ahead of the game. And some of them mentioned, they were looking at majoring in finance. But then there are students, I was one of these students, who really had their parents are just trying to make ends meet. These are not conversations we had at home about money. And so they don't have that same experience. And what I want to know is, are you bringing in those conversations about maybe inequities in our financial system?
Yeah, of course. I think we talk a lot about, predatory practices and what does it look like to scope out scams in your community.
Sure.
And also things like check cashing. There are still people that go to check cashing places. They're not bad, but they do come with a percentage that they take. And so having students understand that and really know like what is out there in their community. And I think the other thing is just giving them the tools and the knowledge and the language to come home and talk about this taboo subject. Sometimes it's really taboo because it is personal and it is sometimes sensitive for families to talk about money. And so it gives kids the language and the ability to ask their teachers questions, but also to bring that knowledge home. And we have so many like anecdotes of students saying, I helped my mom open a bank account this weekend.
Wow.
And I invested some of my money, and asking their teachers, does this look like a good investment, or should I consider something else? And so, and high yield savings accounts, like where should I put my money when I have it and I have this job and I want to save? And so I think there's just so much that it gives kids the power. It really empowers them to do those things and ask those questions. And then on top of that, really scope out the scams. I always like to talk about the fact that, a lot of kids go to social media as their first line of information. But there's so many scams out there. So how do you filter and look for the scams? And how do you know what source of information is truth and not? And we really like to highlight that in this curriculum and just talk about how, when you're talking about like wealth building, what does that mean? And how do we make that accessible to everybody at any level? And so it's a really eye-opening piece of our curriculum, is just to make sure that students know what is out there and how they might be scammed or, predatory.
Victim to predatory practices, all of that. I love that. I love empowering students to, make a difference with their own finances, but also maybe in their communities and fight back. I mean, a lot of us think the financial system is stacked against a lot of people, and we want these students to change that. So that's awesome. How do you make it a really engaging class for students? I know there's a lot of hands-on learning opportunities for them. There's technology. There are community partnerships that are part of that. Tell me about some of those things that come into the class.
The great thing about financial education is that there are so many resources out there, and they're all free for everyone. And so not only is the curriculum part of that, but it's also there's so many simulations and hands-on things that you can do both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So I'll give a couple examples. One of the units goes through a tax simulation where kids file their taxes, not with their information, but with pretend information, and get to just interact with the platform, because many of us file our taxes online. And so what does that look like? And then I just went into a classroom where a teacher was showing kids and having them go on like a health insurance website and actually read through, like, where would I find a doctor? How much would a doctor be if I was on this work plan, right? And what is covered and what is not? And those intricacies of things that even adults struggle with right now, of how do I read a health insurance plan and choose one that's best for me and my family. And so there's a ton of those examples. There's another example of not technology, but a teacher bringing in the paper like credit card advertisement in the mail, and they are able to just look at it and say, let's open this right now together and let's see, should I open this credit card? Like what's the benefits of having this credit card? What is the APR? What does that mean? And so really bringing those everyday things that we deal with adults. And then the partnership side of it is there are so many banks and financial institutions that really want to get involved in schools, and they provide free lessons and free interactive hands-on opportunities for kids to really reinforce what a teacher is teaching them. They're not teaching brand new information, but teachers love when other people can come in and reinforce what they're like, it's not just me that's telling you this, it's true in the world. And so they're able to really interact with those as well. And there's just a lot of amazing stuff out there. I love it. I mean, online there's so many ways you can find games and things like that to practice this stuff. You mentioned that there is a college and career prep piece to the course. Obviously, we understand how this is preparing you for adult life, but specifically, what is talked about in terms of prepping for college or a career, and maybe even a career that involves finance? Yeah, our college and career unit is the longest unit that we have, and that's with good reason, right? So I think they're able to stop first and think about like the career side of things. When I was growing up, I feel like I only knew about 4 big careers, and I chose one, and I became a teacher. But there's so much out there that exists now, and there's so much exposure if we just let kids dig in and do some research. And so this gives them the time and the space to say, what are my interests? What are my strengths? And then what careers could that lead to? And then there's a whole component on the college aspect, and what are the college options for myself? Is it a 4-year college? Is it a 2-year college? Is it an alternative pathway? And then what's that going to cost? So thinking about not just what the sticker price is, right? We learn about sticker price. It's also what are the other things I'm going to have to pay for and budget for? And then what does payback look like? So really facing, after I'm done with, pursuing my dreams, then what does reality look like, and how long is that going to take me to pay off, and thinking about that. And so it really lets them dive in and explore those things without the pressure of being in it, right? Because sometimes you don't face reality until you're there, and so it's really supporting those decisions early on.
That is amazing. I think that's such a good point that, you go to a lot of times, and at least historically, maybe this isn't the case now, but you were told go to college and you'll figure it out. And nowadays you really can't afford to just be there spending all that money figuring it out. There are still many ways to take courses at a community college or through high school credits, of course, if you're just still in the process of figuring out what you love. But you don't have to be wasting all this money on college while you're doing that. And so I love that you're giving them this opportunity to plan in advance and lay out, okay, this is what this plan would look like
Right.
8 years in school versus 4 years in school versus 2 years, and what kind of job that could result in. So that's awesome. One exciting thing that's coming up in the financial literacy world is a FinLit conference in March for DPS.
Yes, that's right.
Tell us about that. This is a chance for students and businesses to come together, teachers, everyone.
Yeah. So the Junior Achievement Stock Market that you attended, and you mentioned, they are running a DPS only stock market challenge for us. It is where kids get to just practice and build a portfolio and compete against each other. It's really high energy. It's really fun. They do an amazing job, and they're so excited to partner with us. The other thing that we're bringing in is Ent Credit Union does a budgeting simulation with real Colorado salaries, and then they break down like housing costs. And so students are able to pick a profession, and then they get to kind of see, how would I budget my life in Denver right now with that profession? And that includes like buying a car. What does it look like to order out versus to cook for yourself? And so students get to just really walk through and interact with that and be able to plan a little bit of what the exciting part, like what could I do with my potential future.
Love that. And that's in March.
That's in March. Yep. And then we have some panelists. We have some curriculum folks coming and some other businesses coming, and just to give, a whole wide variety of, there are a ton of people that want to get involved with just financial literacy and DPS. And so it's been great to really forge those partnerships, and we hope to just build that up over the years. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously they have a vested interest in making sure our students are coming out prepared for the job world. Financial literacy, of course, doesn't have to be something you wait until high school to learn. Yeah. And speaking of partnerships, we know that there are groups that are helping kids as young as elementary school learn some simple things like budgeting or writing a check.
Yeah. So the standards, like I said, span K to 12, right? And there's a reason for that. You have to start young, right? Money comes into our life from when you are born, really. And so at the kindergarten level, we're really working to get a lot of resources to our elementary and high school. And kindergarten, they're exposed to like, what is money and what is coins and how do I interact with money? And then all the way up through, 8th grade, they're preparing for high school. And so what is going to be the piece that I need to know before I enter high school? And so we're both making sure that there's a ton of resources out there, and we're making sure that teachers have their hands on those. But then one example is we have a partnership with Young Americans Bank, and where students go to Young Ameritown, and they run a town for a day, and teachers are hands off, and they are able to just really run this town. They have a job, they really own it, and any adult who I talk to now who has been through Young Ameritown remembers it.
Yeah, that's been around a while.
It's been around a while, and they really hold on to that as, wow, yes, I was the judge and I remember that, or I was a doctor, and so they're really able to go through this simulation. And then Young Americans Bank, right, is an educational institution. They have tiny little stools that you walk up to that a kid can really interact with a financial institution, right, from a young age, and their parents can help them open a bank account, but they get to own a lot of that. And so there's a ton out there, and so it's just getting teachers connected to those things, and that's really truly our goals moving forward, is to just make sure that our community, our partners, and our schools are connected.
Wonderful, wonderful. And ways that they can take this home to family, start that conversation like you mentioned. So one thing we want to talk about, you asked me this before the program began today, what is one thing I wish I had known?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great question. You mentioned that teachers like to bring this up in the classes. So you asked it to me, and then I'll ask it to you. But I'll just say one thing I wish I had known when I was younger was compound interest. That whole idea that if you start saving money, $50 per paycheck even, over time that really does add up, versus if you wait 10 years, let's say, to start saving money, you're not going to have as much when you're 65, just because of that lost 10 years. And never too late to start, of course, but if I had known how much that would make a difference, like if someone had put that calculation in front of me and said, saving this much this year, 40 years from now will look like this.
Yeah.
I think that would have been eye-opening for sure.
Huge. I mean, I think about, right, that's what we message to our high schoolers, right? So they have their first jobs, and $50 a month can go a long way.
Yes.
And you think that you have to have a whole lot to invest, and that's just not true. And so what does it look like to empower, you as an 18-year-old to be able to invest some money and then watch it grow over time, which is amazing.
Yeah. No, that's the other one is not mine, but my husband fell victim to the credit card companies that would come to the college campuses, which I'm pretty sure doesn't happen anymore. I think a lot of them don't allow it, but they were so, ubiquitous back then. Like you would get a free T-shirt if you sign up for this credit card, or get a free lunch or something. And I avoided those, but he signed up for a lot of them. Worked up some credit card debt, and there you go. There he is, starting out as an 18-year-old with credit card debt.
Yes.
So that's another one I would say, like, please learn from his mistakes. I'll throw him in there.
Yeah.
And yourself, what would you? Yeah.
I would say there's two things that stand out. One is like health insurance. The health insurance packages that you have to choose from sometimes can just be so confusing. You're a 20-year-old fresh out of college, 21-year-old fresh out of college. You have no idea what any of this, because you've probably, if you're lucky, you've been healthy, right? And so facing a world where you're like, oh, I have to like choose from a health insurance plan, and then how is this going to affect me? That's one of them I really wish that I would have had. And then the other one is just, what are your options for buying a house? Because everybody, and it changes, right? But in our parents' day and age, or my parents' day and age, it was like you put down 20% and that's it. But there's really so many other options to buy property and have that equity build over time.
Right.
Similar to that compound interest, you're talking about like your own equity in home and real estate. And so I think those two things would have been a game changer for me, and it would have been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, these are all the things that we hope the kids are learning, and they will be much better off someday because of it. So thank you, Theresa Connolly, our DPS Financial Literacy Curriculum Specialist, for having this important conversation today. Thank you for listening to the lesson plan. We hope to have many more engaging discussions like this throughout 2026. And be sure to subscribe to the DPS podcast on your favorite app for other great podcasts and topics. We'll see you next time.